so it automatically pick up, select a table range. Otherwise, it may be blank. You have to select it again. And we are going to put the pivot table report in on a new worksheet. So keep this no change, and simply click OK. By doing this, the system automatically created a new worksheet for you. Original one was donors. The new one, sheet 1, and have this information or template ready for you to further specify the information. And the information goes to the right-hand side. If I can pull this out a little bit. Basically, this is the pivot table field. Sometimes you can even, if you don't see this, sometimes you can put the cursor in this area, right-click, and show the pivot table field. This one's hide, and once it is gone, you can show field list. So that's the field list. Basically, this portion is the title of the original table. So you have donor ID all the way up to sequence, SEQ. Now, for us, we need to basically work on those 4 areas. And for this exercise in particular, we need to work on the other 3. What do we put to the row? What do we put to the column? What do we get the value? Those 3 boxes. Okay. For this exercise, requirement number 2, basically we are going to, the row, we are going to put state there. So let's pull this down. So we find out state. By putting state here, basically the pivot table will use the value of different state as the value, as the put them in the row format, but the information will go to each row. Okay. So that's the value of state. It will automatically find out that one. Now, column, what do we put in here? Column, we are going to put volunteer. Volunteer as the column. By simply click that one, it automatically goes under rows. So we need to select this one and then drag this over columns. Okay. So volunteer goes under columns. Basically, we are telling the system that we are going to draw a table with the value of state as the row and the value of the volunteer as the column title. So the system will automatically find out different values for volunteer and use those values as the title of this table. So from here, you can see the volunteers has 3 values, maybe, no, yes. And for state, we have many more. Like we have AE, AK, AL, all the way to West Virginia, WVA. And in between, we have Israel. It's another country. Okay, so we specified what do we use the row title and the column title. Now the next one, we have to specify what do we put as the value. We are going to count how many donors. We count their ID for each donor. We don't care about a particular ID. Instead, we care how many different IDs. So because one donor ID represents one volunteer. So we pick up this one or drag this over value. By default, it automatically gets the sum because the donor ID is specified in a number format. So whenever they saw number, they say, oh, okay, maybe you try to get the total of those values. So default, they get the total number of those donor ID. But for us, that's not our purpose. So in order for us to make that change, what do? Basically, we click this little arrow next to the sum of donor ID. And we choose value field settings. We choose this one. And from it brings us to this pop-up window. We have a couple of operations available for us to choose. The first one and the default one is a sum. Actually, we choose count. By choosing count, we are telling the system, I only want to know how many different donor ID in this file, instead rather than the total value of the donor ID. So that's what we do here. Change the operation from default sum to count. And in other situation, by doing this, it provides us some information in the future. We can still do average, we can do maximum, minimum product, count numbers, standard deviation, this percent, and also variable, for those one, parameter, variable parameter. We have those other options. Those could be advanced application, but we start with basics here, count, and click OK back. You can even specify the number format again. I view this as a kind of advanced application. So I just stay as simple as possible, choose count and click OK to get back. Now they become the total number of donor ID, which represent total number of volunteers in this category. This says from AL and two donor mentioned, they may be the volunteer. 10 says no, and nobody says yes in this case. Okay, so basically that's how do we specify the information, work on columns, rows, and values. So up to this point, we are almost done. The only thing left is change the tab name to pivot table. Pivot table. Okay. So that's the requirement number 2. So coming back with requirement number 2. So operation-wise, number 1, put the cursor in a cell of the range on the donors sheet. And go to insert, choose pivot table. And when the next pop-up screen shows up, click OK, no any change. Okay, we don't need to change. The keys, you have to put this in the cell. You don't put it outside. In a cell of the range, not outside of the range. Okay, click OK. Otherwise, you have to specify the range. And from after that, once you go to the new worksheet and put the state to the rows section, put the volunteer to the columns section, and put the donor ID to values section. After you make these 3 choices, and you click next to donors ID section, and you change the value, click the value field settings, and then change that one from sum to count. That's what we did. And here is the reference path, not